Hey everyone, and welcome to the Balanced Bodies Blueprint. I am your host, Vinny Russo.
And I'm your co-host, Dr. Eryn Stansfield.
And we're shifting gears from all the conventional fitness narrative you hear on most fitness podcasts, as our main emphasis lies in preventative healthcare, adopting a holistic approach to nutrition, and challenging the traditional views on various fitness topics.
Our mission with this podcast is to provide you with the information you need to achieve optimal health.
And on today's podcast, we are going to be talking about supplements today, and we're going to unpack these dirty secrets of supplements. And Dr. Eryn, she's going to be the one that's going to be leading the way. I'm going to be pretty much asking questions. Before we dive into this, speaking of supplements, we want to give a shout out to our sponsors, who is a supplement company, Legion Athletics. We trust them, though, because they provide science-backed supplements. So they give research for their supplements. If you want 20% off your first order, use the code Russo, RUSSO, and then you get double the Legion points, which is basically like Legion Cash, that you can use for every order after that. So when we're talking about supplements, this is definitely is a $1 billion industry. And it seems like everybody today wants to take supplements or is taking supplements, anything from protein powders to probiotics to multivitamins. And there's so much variety to choose from, even within those specific elements of supplements. So for example, with probiotics, there's hundreds of thousands of different probiotics that people could take. And it's really hard to know which ones to take and which ones are actually worth it. So Dr. Eryn, I'm going to ask you right off the bat, what are your thoughts on the prevalence of supplements in our, let's just call it, health or fitness culture today?
Well, they're everywhere, right? So I'm not a big fan of most supplements because
I know that.
because the research is lacking. So there's not really good data. Also, it's a very unregulated market. Which means that it's not really under the FDA's thumb. So, it's funny because I think people complain about big pharma, yet big pharma is regulated, like you know what you're getting. And I think people in general complain less about the supplement market, even though it's a completely unregulated marketplace. And I think that people are under the impression that supplements somehow will do no harm, and that's not necessarily the truth. I think that there's probably good quality supplements out there and probably bad quality supplements out there, but it's really hard to tell the difference.
Yeah, and I think that's an amazing point you brought up, because it is true. People are like, big pharma is out to get them, but all these things they're regulated, and the supplement company they're always giving out good stuff, right? And that's kind of the general consensus that you get from I would say just the fitness culture community in general. It's almost like they want to believe that these supplements will do what they're claiming to do. Almost like, hey, if I take these multivitamins, I'm going to be covered on all bases. And it's not even regulated. You don't even really know if what they're saying is even in there.
Yeah, it could just be powder, right? Like there's nobody to say it's actually vitamins in there.
Exactly.
They could be selling whatever they want to be selling.
So to start this main conversation off, what are the most common supplements that are taken today by the general population?
Well, so I had to look, a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is I had to look this up. Originally, we were going to try to get somebody in this industry to add to kind of interview, but I think there is a bunch of nuances with that, and I think people that even work for supplement industry are afraid to speak freely about some of the things that go on in their companies, and so that's kind of the pushback I got from trying to get somebody like a guest on our show. Again, I had to look some of this up, so I'm going to tell you in general what I found. So fish oil is probably one of the most common supplements out there, and it's actually one that I like. I think, it's pretty prevalent, and it is recommended by some physicians out there. Glucosamine or chondroitin is another one.
That's for the joints.
Yeah, and that's for joint health. I used to, when I was in residency, I used to work with an orthopedist who'd always recommend it to his patients, especially if they had osteoarthritis or early signs of arthritis. But there was a recent article that came out. I think it was, I want to say JAMA, but it was in one of the medical journals that basically said that all the hype around these joint supplements aren't warranted. I think they did some kind of randomized control study.
Yeah, because even like when I got the results back from my MRI, and I have like pretty severe osteoarthritis in my foot, I was like, oh, I'll take some glucosamine, and you kind of just like scoffed at me.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, no, not really.
I think it's okay, but I don't think it actually does wonders as we once thought it did.
Mhm.
Right? This is an area where the research probably changed the minds of some clinicians. Probiotics and prebiotics, that's a big one, especially with gut health people. Melatonin, this one I think you should be very cautious about because, especially in children, they've been noticing that children have been ending up in ERs because they've been eating too many of these gummies and they've been having some side effects. I don't know all the details, but there have been warnings out there
Mhm.
to not let your kids eat too many of these gummies.
Yeah, that's a good warning. And I would also say, even with melatonin in adults, you get used to it, right? So you almost got to give yourself a little bit of a break, so it shouldn't be an every night type thing. I know when I first tried it, it was a 5 milligram thing, and it knocked me right out.
Well, and then some people actually have side effects from melatonin, like sometimes they have really vivid dreams,
Mhm.
or it doesn't really work the way that they thought it
I
would.
don't mind vivid dreams.
Another one's coenzyme Q10. There's some research on that. Echinacea, cranberry, garlic,
Mhm.
ginseng, ginkgo biloba. That was like
I used to take that. My mom used to force that down. She's like, "You got to improve your memory.
yeah, that's I
Have
was
some
like
ginkgo bilobas."
yeah, it was like
I'm
a
like,
nootropic
Mom, I'm
thing.
10. You're shoving vitamins down my throat.
Yeah,
Ginkgo bilobas. It's good for your memory. I'm like, all right, whatever.
yeah,
But before, so what is that? That's the list.
yeah. That's the list.
All right. So before we actually get into the nitty gritty of like going into the research and the history and stuff like that, do you take any supplements, or do you take any of those supplements? And if you do, why do you take them?
So that's an excellent question. I think that for the most part, if you have a nutritious diet and you have a well-balanced diet, you likely don't need supplements. However, I am a fan of a multivitamin. I won't recommend any like particular brand. Obviously do
Go
some
go to go
research.
to go to Legion Athletics, legion.com, and you could get all of your supplements there.
I think the only supplement that I would recommend is for females that are in childbearing age, that they take a multivitamin with folic acid, because if they happen to get pregnant, sometimes they don't know at the very beginning stages of their pregnancy, and folic acid has been known to prevent neural tube defects. So that's the one thing that I would actually recommend medically. But besides that, you don't, if you have a well-balanced diet, I don't think you need to take a multivitamin, but I like to take one. And depending on your age group, there might be some other requirement, like some other recommendations. For example, if you are older and you're prone, have a family history of osteoporosis or a personal history, then, calcium, vitamin D, those sorts of supplements. I mentioned earlier that I like fish oil. That one's mostly just a personal choice.
Mhm.
And there's have been some positive findings with the relationship with that and cardiovascular disease. So those are the main ones. But again, I'm not a big proponent of supplements, just because I think so many times we don't know what's in them.
Yeah, I would say my go-to supplements are a low dose multivitamin, just in case. Fish oil is definitely magnesium. I like to take at night, magnesium glycinate. What else? I take selenium in the morning. I take a B complex in the morning as well. And I have a very nutrient dense diet. It's just I see it more as like better be safe than sorry. If it's not going to cause me any harm and I'm not overdoing it with dosage, I'm just feeling like I'm making sure I'm covering all bases. I think like a whey protein powder is essential, especially when you want to try to increase your protein intake. And the burden of eating a lot of protein might be pretty heavy on the digestive system. So having a whey protein shake or something to that effect, as long as you're not lactose intolerant, is a good idea. I think something like, what I used to drink all the time, like in my water, was branched chain amino acids, and it happens to be a fucking waste of money. So let's get into that. I think that's a pretty good segue. And one thing that's said a lot, the knock on supplements is that they're not regulated, like you said before. So, for example, like you mentioned, you could just take some type of powder, like you put baby powder in a capsule and sell it as like essential amino acids or branched chain amino acids, something like that. So, is this actually true? Can you really can a supplement company actually do that? And can you speak to the federal regulations that apply to substances?
Yeah. So, again, as you mentioned, or as I mentioned earlier, supplement manufacturers aren't obligated to report what's actually inside the supplement. A lot of their reporting comes after marketing. So, um, basically, they're required to post market or tell you about adverse events. That's what the requirement is to the FDA. However, the Federal Trade Commission and local attorneys in general, can prosecute the fraud, but we don't see that very often unless it becomes a big deal. Um, it's
Is that like
the
unless there's like death or
yeah,
like there's
something like that, where it's basically like if an attorney sees like a class action suit, then they can be held to comply with like some regulations basically, but everything is done post market, so they can put something out on the market, and if there's no problems with it, they can continue to make money
oh
off
yeah
of it. So again, like I said, you have to be very careful about what you're getting.
yeah
And there's a lot of history to this. And I know when Vinny and I were going over this, he's like, don't bore people with the history, but I think it's kind of or important because for me, at least, I was wondering where all this came from. At what point did we say, it doesn't matter what's in your supplements? So, there was a congressional package of Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act in 1994, which this allowed the manufacturers to market their products without prior demonstration of safety or efficacy. So I think a lot of what we're seeing now with like the explosion of all these supplements comes from the 90s because they weren't really held to any standard. And basically the feds basically defined a dietary supplement as containing one or more of the following: a vitamin, a mineral, amino acid, herb, or other botanical concentrate, metabolite, constituent, or extract. So basically there's a broad range is the
Mhm.
point. So you can put in a vitamin and that sort of thing. I think there were some issues with that back in the 90s. So in 2007, the FDA issued new rules requiring good manufacturing practices,
yeah
or GMPs. And that's where I think a lot of these third party checkers came out, where they would actually check what's in the supplement. But they require dietary supplements to be properly labeled, free of adulterants, and manufactured according to specific standards for personnel and equipment. So essentially, they want a clean factory and good practices,
Mhm.
right? So this allows manufacturers, in particular in smaller companies, some flexibility still to specify the quality criteria that they will follow. But they don't have to, there's still not very strict regulations. It's just a little bit of an added layer of checking that the manufacturer's actually, a clean factory, and they're actually putting some of the supplement into the thing that they're selling.
Well, yeah, that's like that brings up like proprietary blends.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, it's proprietary, and you can list what's actually in it, but you don't have to say how much is actually in it. So if it's like your proprietary blend is 5 grams, you could have 10 different ingredients in there, all equaling the five
Yeah.
grams.
And I think the thing that's very overlooked is, to your point, and, you know, it doesn't necessarily specify the amounts, and sometimes it is contaminated, right? So there's no specified maximum, for example, or daily dose limits of heavy metals. So we've seen some supplements that have been contaminated with things like lead.
Yeah.
And so, here you are trying to be healthy, and you might be actually ingesting lead. So there's not a lot of regulation until after people say there's a problem with this, right? And it's usually not just one person filing a report with the FDA. It's usually multiple people saying this supplement caused an issue. And so again, there's a lot of supplements out there that may get away with having some adulterants or some contamination in there without us even knowing.
Yeah.
So one thing I will say that the labels are required to state that this product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. I think that's kind of medical terminology. And so supplement manufacturers are prohibited from making direct claims about treating specific diseases. So that's probably a good thing.
That's a good thing. But then you have people like on social media
Yes.
that are like, you know what, it is making direct claims with a specific herb or supplement.
And there's ways to get around it, like it supports the circulatory system, or is good for prostate health or something like that.
Yeah. Well, we often hear claims about supplements and how they could improve their energy or boost immunity, and even have a sense of fighting disease. But the research is often very inconclusive or actually even contradictory to this. So can you talk to us about the challenges with supplement research and how it might contribute to the hype surrounding certain products? Like, what kind of evidence is there to support the use of supplements?
So this is my biggest pet peeve, and I think this is why I don't buy into supplements. Not because I think that they're necessarily all bad or all good, but it's the data, right? So a lot of these supplement companies don't have data. They don't use, the highest hierarchy of quality evidence. So most of them don't have randomized control studies. If they do, those are kind of the supplements that like physicians will recommend for specific medical conditions. And sometimes they'll actually prescribe the pharmacological levels like vitamin D or calcium and stuff like that. But there's not a lot of good data out there, basically. And so it's very hard. And even some of the research, like if the supplement company says, well, we did the research, it's very biased, right? Because they're selling a product. So of course they're going to try to skew the data in their favor. So I don't think it's very difficult to trust one, the data that's out there, and two, the quality of evidence that may have come out, in regards to specific supplements.
Yeah, I think we can go into this a little bit more, but I don't want to. I know I mentioned before the influencer stuff because I want to go back to that before I forget, because we're going to get into some other stuff. But when it comes to the health and wellness space, right? And you have these influencers and they say it's part of their lifestyle, but then they have like this affiliate link to actually earn money. So, and look, you got some of these influencers that have a huge following. You got people that really believe in them. You got a bunch that know what they're talking about, and you got a lot that don't either. But even with the ones that you're talking about, they have these affiliate links and they're giving out, they're like, hey, this is like a supplement that works for me for fat loss, for example. And we know supplements besides like caffeine really doesn't, and well, I mean, you could go into like ephedra, but that's illegal. But besides that stuff, like there's not really a supplement that's going to help with fat loss. But they might say this helped me with my fat loss, and now it gets people to believe that this helps with fat loss. So how do we navigate that landscape of potentially biased information?
Yeah, so I think it's very crucial to be critical of the information out there. So if an influencer or a person is saying the supplement worked for me, just remember that anecdotal and personal experience doesn't generalize. So just because it worked for some person doesn't mean that it will work for everybody. That's why we have studies that happen, because we have to make sure that whatever claim is made, that it could be generalized to the general population. So that being said, so I'd be very critical of the information. Look for reliable sources, reputable scientific journals. Like if they put out something and they say, look at the data, make sure you look at the journal it's published in. Is this a journal that's cited? Is this a journal that is out in the community? Or is this like a sponsored magazine that, that the supplement company paid to be in, or did the supplement company run this, the study themselves? So these are all things you need to look at. So look at reliable sources, evidence-based health organizations, and then always talk to your doctor before starting any new supplement. And the reason I say that is because if you are on medications, supplements are still drugs. They will interfere with whatever you are taking, or they can, at least. They have the potential. And on being on the medical side of things, I see a lot of people taking, different supplements that sometimes will interfere with their medications and will either decrease the efficacy of their medications or cause some adverse event. But I think, one source that you actually gave me was examine.com to look up some of these things. If you're going to be critical about the supplements, go on that website. They give you the cited studies and they kind of have a general consensus of what they recommend. I like it because they will tell you what kind of evidence is out there. Was it randomized control studies in humans, not in mice? And what kind of evidence? Is it strong evidence or is it weak evidence? So it's a good way for the lay population, I think, to look up stuff if they want to be critical. But really, you should focus on having a healthy diet and lifestyle at the end of the day.
Yeah. And you bring up a good point too, because like even with my father, he looks up a lot of stuff now, and he was talking about doing the Shilajit, right? And that was it still is a big thing. But the medication he was taking, it would actually, what's the word? Contradict,
Yeah.
right? It would actually contradict that medicine. And it was like he was going to buy some, and he talked to us, and we were like, no, like you're on the certain medication, you can't. So good thing he talked to us before that. But that's the potential like dangerous side of it. You see something that's claiming by all social media that it's going to be great for your health, and then you're on medication for something else, and there's a contradiction there. But when we talk about this, how how can we encourage, because like you said, like you might go online and find something like on a magazine or something, or like sciencedirect.com or something like that. How can you encourage more rigorous scientific research on supplements? Like how can we get the best research out there for supplements?
Yeah, so I think, it's sad because I think there would be supplements out there that we could get data on. I think that the research is lacking because one, there's no regulation on it. So really, they can go to market immediately. But I think if there were improved research in this area, that we would actually know which supplements work and which, aren't good. Supplement industry would suffer, and it's a lot of people would be held to a different standard, a lot of companies. So I think improving research, and that would mean standardized testing, developing standardized protocols for supplement testing, including manufacturing, dosage, and administration. And that would help us compare across studies. And then the other thing is long-term studies in humans, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of these supplements are peddled, but when you look at their research, they're actually not done in humans. Or if they're done in humans, their observational studies are not really a good study design. So again, looking at long-term studies that examine long-term effects on various health outcomes, and also include potential risks and interactions. And then we can look at the real world evidence. And I think that's what you get with like a lot of these influencers, is you're getting the real world evidence, like what worked for them.
Yeah. When you said standardized testing before, how are supplements tested nowadays then?
So again, I'm looking this up. So in the United States, the FDA is responsible for overseeing the safety of dietary supplements, but the regulatory framework is less stringent. And so, like I mentioned, for pharmaceutical drugs, it's very stringent. I mean, there's different phases that you have to go through. It takes years to get a drug to market, whereas in the supplement industry, it's not like that. So if you look at just a general overview, there's pre-market testing. So in this, with the supplements, this is not required to be proven safe or effective before they are marketed. Like I said, they can just, do some basic testing, and then put it out on the market. And then, like I mentioned before, a lot of the adverse events that are recorded are post-marketing monitoring and regulation. So once a dietary supplement is on the market, the FDA monitors its safety and can take action only after that product is on the market, and only if it poses a risk to consumers, or if they're making false or misleading claims, essentially. So kind of what I said with the specific language, if they're like, if it treats the disease, then they can take action on it.
Yeah.
So there is testing done by manufacturers. So there's third-party testing, which I would recommend. However, again, there's a grain of salt or doubt with that, because hopefully the third-party tester isn't in cahoots with, with the manufacturer. But I would say that that's an extra level regulation, at least on the part of the manufacturer. And not to knock on all supplement companies, because there are supplement companies out there that are doing their very best to make sure they have high quality supplements. And those are usually done or tested by third party testers. And in general, they do purity tests, potency tests, identity tests to make sure what's actually in the product, and performance tests, which are less common. So these are kind of some of the tests that they look at to make sure that they're standardizing their product.
Yeah, and you mentioned third-party testing. I would say, like for what we have available to us, that would be, like you said, another layer to make it almost like a gold standard. Like you want to have that because it is that extra layer.
Yes.
It does cost some money, but can you speak to like how to get that third-party certification?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a manufacturer, and I know very little about the supplement manufacturer side, but when I was doing reading, there are independent organizations such as the US Pharmacopoeia, USP, the Consumer Lab, and NSF International offer testing and certification services. So, they will be advertised on the supplement if they were a third party test, and I would look for those three specific companies. They seem to have pretty good reputation, and supplements that pass these tests can display basically can be displayed on their label and then help consumers make a decision about whether they want to buy that supplement or not.
Yeah, I would say that if you're going to go for a supplement, try to do your best to make sure that that it does say third party testing, because like we just said, it has that of extra layer of just making sure that maybe what they're saying is true. But how would one ensure the safety and quality of a supplement?
I really don't think that you can, in my opinion. Like, it's very difficult, right? Because even within the supplement company, there's a lot of variability. Like, is one batch the same as the next batch? Are they actually doing the appropriate testing? Is the actual ingredient in their supplement? I get really I want to say douche chills when I see like proprietary blend, like what's in that.
Mhm.
And I understand that, there are trade secrets, but still it just, you don't know what's in there. So, there's different quality checks. If you're getting in like an herbal supplement or something like that, there's different plant species used. There could be different plant parts used. There's different harvesting and storage conditions, so they might have gone bad. Who knows what they're doing? And then there's a processing part too. So there's so many variables that I think it's really difficult to really ensure the safety of the supplement and the quality. But the only thing I would say is, look for that third party tester, and then look for accuracy in labeling. Like I said, proprietary blends always, you should be suspicious about that.
Yeah. So when we were looking at supplements in general, the ones that, might be trying to get over on people,
Yes.
are there any examples that you looked up that actually had the supplement do harm to people?
Yes. So, these are on the FDA adverse event website, and the FDA has put out warnings about these. So these are very public, but Crantum is one. It's a herb used for self-treatment of opioid withdrawal. It kind of mimics an opioid essentially. And the FDA has warned against it. It's used because of overdose and related fatalities, actually. So, and it can be addictive. A lot of people abuse it. There is dependence on it.
Give you that same opioid feeling? Is that why?
I think it does.
Yeah.
I don't know much about it. Obviously, I've never tried it, but
I'm guessing like because it's for the withdrawal, it has to do
yeah,
just not to
likely,
that serious
yeah.
effect. Yeah.
And then there's been contamination, like with salmonella. So there's been issues with that. But it can lead to symptoms such as respiratory depression, anorexia, depression, psychosis, and even seizures. So again, this is something that is sold. I've seen it sold in gas stations.
Yeah.
So you can buy it, pretty much anywhere. And I think it's still being sold. But again, the FDA has said, please don't take this supplement. And then there's herbal treatments that can be nephrotoxic, so toxic to your kidneys. One is a Chinese herb, and I'm probably going to mispronounce it, Aristocolia, which is a weight loss herbal formula. It can be toxic to the kidneys, and it's a probable human carcinogen.
Lucia.
Oh, there you go. That's probably how you say it. I don't know how to say it. I think the biggest one that I saw that I was, you know, kind of interested in, because you see these traditional Indian or Chinese medical systems that are saying that you should take herbs. And a lot of these have contaminants from heavy metals. So they, like I said, they can be contaminated with lead. And that, I think that's the biggest one that they found is lead contamination. So you have to be very careful about what you're actually taking.
Well, I know like lead and mercury are two pretty extreme things, but I mean, this could be a whole nother podcast episode, but I heard you're someone who's also against heavy metal testing.
Yeah, so I am against the heavy metal testing. Mostly, and like if you're looking at the functional medicine space, so I
Like toxicity from heavy metals, like how do they know?
well, so first off, you have to make sure there's an actual exposure. So I work in the I work for the Air Force, for example. So a lot of my work population are exposed to heavy metals. So they are, so this is
This is
my
real
playing
house.
field. Like,
Just to let everybody know, this is going to be an episode, and Dr. Aaron's going to run her shit on it.
so I've got mechanics who work with chromium and cadmium. So I know a lot about heavy metal testing. If you're going to a practitioner and you have vague symptoms, especially like a functional practitioner, and you say I have vague symptoms and they're like, let's do some heavy metal testing. For the most part, I disagree with that, because one, it's, when we see people that are actually have an exposure to a heavy metal, we make sure we get their personal history, their work history, the route of exposure, how much they're being exposed to that metal. So we have bioengineers that actually go out and monitor how much they're actually being exposed. So this isn't done just willy-nilly. And then the other thing you have to be very careful is there's only a few blood tests that are used clinically for heavy metal testing. And so some of these, places will be like, we're going to test you for chrome, for example. Well, what kind of chrome? What species of chrome? For example, chrome 6 is the actual toxic one, but we don't know as physicians and clinicians what an okay level, so a normal level of chrome 6 is versus a toxic level in your blood.
No.
So it's very difficult to make an inference what is good and what is bad. So you have to make sure that the test that they're actually using is clinically verified.
Yeah. We're gonna do a whole episode on that. So I can see you're getting itchy over there a bit. So let's get back onto the supplements. Let's get away from the heavy metals. Do you believe that the supplement industry should be more transparent about its research and funding sources?
Yeah, but I think that about big pharma too. I don't think that, yes, obviously they should be transparent. There should be better quality studies out there. They should be done in humans. They should actually have consistent manufacturing processes and standards. And they should, report the good results and the bad results, I think.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's ever going to happen. I think that's a pipe dream. So
Yeah,
the supplement industry is way too much. They make way too much money for anybody to actually regulate them unless something very bad happens.
It would be pretty cool to see like a company say like, hey, these are the tests, this one showed that, what we said wasn't true, but these said that it did, because it shows like authenticity. And I think even if you look at like social media influencers today, the most authentic ones are now the ones that are actually being highlighted and spotlight. And I think it could almost show like a reason for why you should trust that supplement company with what they're putting out.
Again, I'm skeptical when it comes from the supplement company itself. Like I would look for, independent research. So like I said, you can look at examine.com and look at the actual data. And, usually they cite different sources for their data points.
So let's end this conversation with like just a brief sum up of how we can be able as consumers be able to distinguish between reputable and unreliable supplement information.
Well, again, I would say that your best bet is to not rely on supplements and to make sure you have a healthy lifestyle and a balanced diet. If you feel like you want to take a supplement, make sure that it is a high quality supplement. And by what I mean by that is usually it's a third party tested, but even then be a bit skeptical. If you're taking a random supplement, look at examine.com, see what data is out there. Make sure you run whatever supplement you're taking by your physician so that they are at least aware of what you are taking, and make sure that it doesn't interfere with any medications or any disease processes that you've been diagnosed with.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good little outline for people to follow, a nice little checklist. But when it comes to supplements, it shouldn't be the end all be all either. You shouldn't think like just because you're taking a supplement, like you're going to get these amazing results. If anything, they should complement what you're doing with your nutrition and your healthy living lifestyle with movement and exercise. So with that being said, I do believe we have a podcast on the top 5 supplements, right? I think we
did that.
I think we did. Maybe it was more than top 5, but those have research behind it. So if you want to take a look back at that, you could definitely do so to get some quality supplements.
I will say that I usually don't think of whey protein as a supplement. I know that it is, but I will say that if you are doing a lot of resistance training and you can't get your protein requirement in, that's a great supplement.
And so is creatine.
Yes.
We didn't really say that, but this is more like on the health side, not so much the physical side. So with that being said, we are going to end there, and then we will definitely do an episode on heavy metal testing, because you got very antsy with that one. You wanted to keep going. I kind of had to tap your knee to get you to stop. So that being said, thanks for joining us.
On behalf of Balanced Bodies, we just want to say thank you for joining us on this episode of the Balanced Bodies Blueprint.
We are committed to bringing valuable content, and if you enjoyed today's episode, we'd greatly appreciate it if you can take a moment and like it and leave a 5-star review.
On Apple, just go to the show, scroll down to the bottom and rate it there. If you're on Spotify, go to the show's page, click the 3 dots, and you can rate it there as well.
And if you believe in the power of knowledge, share this episode on your social media to try and get the information out there to as many people as possible.
And as you navigate your own path towards better health, remember that Balanced Bodies is forever in your corner. See you all next week.
The podcast content may include discussions of medical topics and health-related information. However, the information provided should not be considered exhaustive or complete, and it should not be relied upon as a substitute for professional medical advice or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare providers with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment.